But we had a perfect keyword for our next session here. What is it what family keeps together? What is the glue of the family cross generations? And one of the answers is philanthropy, family philanthropy. It provides not just a purpose and a vehicle to engage for those who has exited the original family business, and maybe responding to your last question, what happened if family business, the original one, is not existent anymore, sold maybe. We see here also a clear trend. So for me, I always say it's not the end of the story, it's the beginning of another one. If you start your family to organize your business not as active running the business, but as a family investor, we see these days that many of the families invest their money back into new businesses. They become entrepreneurial again and do that via professional wealth management and family office structure. So, but all of these will be kept together by a strong sense of belonging together, giving back to communities, and again leads us to family philanthropy. And I'm very happy to have today as a guest here on stage one of the most prominent philanthropies in the family business environment. And we have a very special guest of high caliber, and of course we need an interviewer who can match. And therefore I'm very happy that we have today William Lewis. He's the publisher of the Wall Street Journal and CEO of Dow Jones. Dow Jones and the Wall Street Journal command a huge global audience comprising the world's biggest business elite. At the helm of the company, Will has spent over 20 years in journalism and publishing all around the world, previous serving as business editor on the Sunday Times and editor-in-chief of Telegraph Media Group. So please join me to welcome our moderator, Will Lewis, and our prominent guest, Sir Evelyn de Rothschild from the UK.
There we go.
All good. Hello, everyone. Hello. Thank you very much for that.
Yeah. Very kind.
Very kind. Thank you, Peter. Very kind words. And thank you to EY for putting on this really fantastic event. Much appreciated, and we're very glad to be here. I have real pleasure today of being able to gently probe Sir Evelyn and his years of experience. Sir Evelyn will need no introduction, but I'll introduce him anyway. He is, of course, the chairman of E.L. Rothschild's, the amazing family investment company. For decades, Sir Evelyn has been what I would describe as an agent for progress, spanning a wide range of fields: medical, research, health, welfare, education, and the arts, just to name a few. He remains actively involved in academia, charity, and, of course, investing. And as Peter said, Sir Evelyn remains one of the most sophisticated and active family philanthropists of his generation. A man who has spent his life advancing the cause of philanthropy, creating ever greater social impact and outcomes. And I can also vouch for him being a wonderfully charming, humorous, and lovely person to spend time with, which I think is probably as important. So, so it really is my really great pleasure to ask Evelyn to maybe open up by saying a few words, and then I'll engage in some relentless questioning with the help of you all in the audience, please. So, but Evelyn, do you want to say a few words to start with?
Well, thank you very much. That's very, very kind of you. It's a great honor to be here, and I'm delighted I was asked to do this. Before I say, and I think the word few words, you'll have to tell me if my words are too few or too long. I just want to say one thing about Peter Entridge, who is the Business Center of Excellence and did all the work to organize with his team. I think we owe a great deal of thanks to the people who organize this. And I would like personally to thank them and wish them well and say what a wonderful organization you have, and thank you so much. I think it is really remarkable to do this. Now, I'm going to ask you a strange question. And if you'll be kind enough to put up your hands, as you're all family businesses, are you familiar with the words UFR? Anyone familiar with the words UFR? Someone must be familiar. No one? Well, let me explain if no one is. As far as I can remember, UFR was how my family described ugly family rows. Every family has ugly family rows, and I think the word UFR is something we should put in our books. It means nothing to the outsider. It's a code we family use. And I think it's important to realize that families go through difficult moments, but they also get through very good moments. Let us begin by posing the question, why associate the future of philanthropy with the nature of the family firm? The fact is, the family business remains the core of the global economy. Let's use the standard definition of private firms where the family has more than 50% of the voting rights, and public firms where the comparative proportion is at least a third. It might interest you to know this fact, that on that basis, family business account for 80 to 90% of firms worldwide. If you tot up the top 500 family firms in the world, you would have sales of 6.5 trillion in 2015 and a workforce of 21 million people. Aggregated into a single entity, the top family firms would be the third largest economy in the world, behind only the United States and China. That is a very remarkable figure, and people should be aware of it. The sheer variety of family businesses is what makes them special. They range from a shop selling raspberries to a transnational bank on the one hand. They are the garage businesses that enable, say, a father and daughter to sell the new app they have designed and encourage the children to run errands after school. On the other, there is the Takanaka Corporation, a mighty architectural engineering and construction business based in Osaka that began life as a carpenter store in Nagoya in 1610. The firm's longevity is as remarkable as its growth. Nor is this contrary to trend. The average company on the Family 500 Index has been around for 88 years. My own family began its work in the financial sector as far back as 1760, where Mayor Amschel Rothschild set up a shop in Frankfurt dealing in notes and coins. It was his son, Nathan Meyer, in 1798, who moved to Manchester, then the center of the global textile industry, and 11 years later established a bank in the City of London. As you read in the second volume of Niall Ferguson's wonderful history of the Rothschilds, the world banker, legend that N.M. Rothschild made a fortune from the Battle of Waterloo is just that, a legend. But the Rothschild Archives, a research library that was set up when I was chairman of the bank and is one of my provenance achievements, is open to everyone. You're all welcome to come. It is a charity. Holds a treasure trove of documents demonstrating the trust that arose between Nathan and Wellington. This was an age in which over 60% of armies were accounted for by mercenaries who expected payment in coin, not notes. And if you didn't pay your troops on Friday, they fought for the other side on Monday. And so Wellington needed my ancestor. So in sum, the scale and frequency of durability of family businesses make the subject one more definitely worth looking at. What is the strength of family businesses? You don't have to be a historian or an anthropologist to grasp the importance of kinship in explaining the origins of most social organizations. No less than the building of a religious congregation. Family ties are the natural force to harness when launching a business idea. Its initial incentive is self-sufficiency. providing family members with gainful employment and daily purpose. In his brilliant book, The Suburfist Family, Ferdinand Mount says the following: "The nuclear family, with all its drawbacks and dangers, is a biologically derived way of living, which comes naturally to us and which generates an emotional force of enduring and unquestionable power." He shows how this little social unit has fought off attacks from all manner of hostile forces, from Plato to Christianity to Marxism, all of which wanted to replace its position as the first and most important social structure. They have all failed. Mount is right, of course. Wealth creation begins so often with the family taking advantage of the human capital it already has deposited in its DNA and its family gatherings. We live in an era of frantic speed and volatility, in which fads come and go faster than ever before created and destroyed on the brutal altar of social media. Family businesses are an institutional face of the opposite tendency they symbolize: continuity and extreme tradition, even as it is passed down from one generation to the next. They combine the rationality of wealth creation with the emotion of looking after one's kin. Of course, such businesses will thrive only in the context where government does not tax the handing over of commercial assets from one generation to another generation. In Britain, we negotiated the business property relief in 1976, which provides up to the exemption from inheritance tax on businesses or holding of shares in an unquoted company. But it's not only wealth that is value. Think of the great names that we have had in England, and we speak well of them for many generations. People like Rowntree, the great chocolate family, Cadbury, Nuffield, the great man who was the creator of motor cars and then became the supporter of health. And I can go on and give you many more. All reflect in their different ways the capacity of family businesses to serve their communities. The public interest in some cases, groundbreaking research, this is part of what such businesses stand for. Beyond the profit motive, it is the counterweight to the predominance of greed which has given capitalists such a bad name, especially, though let me emphasize, only in some cases across the Atlantic. In 2014, the United Kingdom Department for Business, Innovation and Skills surveyed 40 small and medium-sized family enterprises. According to this report, most believe that their businesses, explicitly dynastic identity, protected a positive image, implying trustworthiness, as opposed to being a large corporate. The family dimension, in other words, can nurture inclusive capitalism, humanizing business at a moment in history when it needs most, when faceless corporations are pillared as forces of unrestrained greed that systematically dodge tax, that treat people appallingly, whether they are customers or employees. I take it as an axiom that a family business should treat its employees better than non-family firms. One thinks it's immediately of one great example in my country, and that is John Lewis Partnership, which had a profit-sharing scheme since 1920 and now boasts 90,000 partners, which own 45 John Lewis shops and over 300 Waitrose supermarkets. This forms of employees' participation transform the relationship between management and staff, and these it blurs the line into virtual non-existence. The attachment of a family name to a commercial interest can act as a brand and a trademark, all rolled into one, as long as that is as the business has been managed in a fashion consistent with its origins. Downside of family businesses. Now where, of course, there's a rule book that says it will be managed in this way. Sometimes the Irish saying, shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations, proves all too accurate. The family dominance of a business can, after all, become a stranglehold that prevents it from getting the nutrients it needs. You may recall a Japanese-American scholar called Fukuyama, who in act of casino recklessness called of his book, The End of History and the Last Man. At least one of the prophecies enshrined in that title seemed unlikely to come about, and to Fukuyama's intense embarrassment, neither of them did. To help him recover, he wrote a book called Trust, which looked at the social structures in different countries that encourage and discourage prosperity, particularly interested in his examination of China's rigorous families, its failures to use the jargon so strict in obedience to the patriarchal unit in China that their many small and medium-sized find it difficult to trust. Outsiders sufficiently grow as quickly or as far as they might. As Fukuyama writes, even if the business prospers and it grows to a large scale, there is often no effort to move to a modern management system with a formal division of labor, a management hierarchy, and a decentralized, multi-divisional form of organization. The company remains organized according to a highly centralized hub and spoke system, with the organized various branches, all reporting to the founding entrepreneur. This is worth repeating, not because all Chinese companies stall and decline, as Fukuyama warned that they might, but they don't, but because we should pause and heed his image of Chinese familism, holding companies back. We cannot assume that a clannish company will necessarily be a successful company. One only needs to look at the brush with mortality suffered by Marks and Spencer, founded in 1884 by Michael Marks and Thomas Spencer in Leeds. The company was a British success story until it was run by an outsider who clearly did not understand the brand. And though profit margins remained high in the 90s, the prices drove customers away. And not until the retail good management of Stuart Rose became executive chairman was the rot stopped. Particularly, so David Cameron hopes now that Lord Rose, who is chief of the British Stronger in Europe campaign, can pull off an even greater coup in the UK, the referendum, which is 2 weeks away. Anyway, I go on. I hope I'm not going for too long, but anyway, a family business that is hermetically sealed will fail. A family business that treats outsiders as inherently suspect will falter. First, it is vital that senior figures in any such firm have experience and privilege of seeing the business from the outside looking in. I served 2 apprenticeships, one at Rothschild's and the other in preparation before university. I served in the Royal Navy, an experience I value as much as I've had in my life. I worked for a financial institution and for a mining company. Before joining my family firm, I wanted to see how it was done elsewhere. On my travels, my horizons were broadened and my eyes opened. And my very first strings of globalization, I was also encouraged by those experiences to serve in other capacities beyond my office at the bank. As chairman of St. Mary's Medical School, where Fleming invented penicillin, where it discovered, and chairman of the Economist newspaper, I was honored to introduce, to China. And I became part of building a new town called Milton Keynes, halfway between London and Birmingham, the latter being the model new city built in the north of Buckinghamshire. I'm much involved in the conservation of animals, particularly Asian elephants, and patronage of the arts, and always been part of my belief. I believe that these activities have complemented my professional pursuits, and that 2 forms of experience are more than the sum of their parts. Work plus philanthropy is a chemical compound in the fizzing heart of the family business. Second, outsiders are needed at the very center of business and close down the self-reinforcing echo chamber, and to puncture groupthink, the presence of outsiders also makes it harder for family rivalries that are not related to work and to be imported into the workplace. Just as the investment of outside equity can transform a business, the meteoric investment of outside human capital has the capacity of change a firm's culture, and its modus operandi can make the difference between success and failure. I take the example of bringing in 2 members of the non-family to the business, and they played a huge part becoming partners in 1970. Thus was the modern bank born. It has never forgotten its core nature as a family concern, but also embraced the pluralism and diversity that is part of modern life. Top management from a single family could hope to prosper, perhaps to survive. Let me now, and you've all been patient to listen, let me conclude as the success of a family business has not only been measured in turnover and profit, and as important as they are, the impact that a firm makes upon the world matters too. A well-managed family firm can be a greenhouse of imaginative social enterprise and philanthropy. It can nurture vision as well as financial ambition. At Rothschild, it has always been important to me that the bank anticipated the trend of history, which is why it expanded its operations into Malaysia, Singapore, China, and Australia, for the same reason that I took The Economist into China. The two strategies were complementary, though not formally related. Above all, no family firm will prosper if it's not open to outside influence and the participation of outsiders. Those businesses that remain rigid and sealed will be broken apart by the wind of change. It is the adaptable family business, the house with an open door, that will always win the day. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. A very important manifesto for everyone interested in how to run a family business, and that house with an open door, I think, is something that we'll all take away. If we've got some time for questions, if that's okay. I get to start. Sorry about that. We have got mics, though, in the room, so don't be shy. We've only got about 20 minutes for questions, so don't leave this room frustrated that you didn't get to ask Sir Evelyn your question. But can I start, Sir Evelyn, by just talking a bit about your foundation? Your foundation, I think, has been in existence for about 50 years. Would you mind just talking a bit about the principles, how you run that, the importance of trustees, the sort of work that it's done and focused on, and perhaps some mistakes that have been made, if any have been made, that we could learn from?
Well, thank you for mentioning it. We run it as a properly registered charity under the Charity Commission, and it has trustees, and we make full reports every year. It's been in existence 50 years. It was set up with the broadest view of opportunity for the arts, for medicine, and for education. And we support many different activities, many hundreds of apprentices as we've helped. We've done a lot in the medical world, and we have done a considerable amount in helping art. We have two views which I think are important. One, on the whole, we don't support cement and buildings. We like to cement human beings. I think we always find other people to put up the bricks and mortar. We like to put the people inside to help. And the second thing which we do, which I think is terribly important, as far as I'm concerned, charity is a business. And every time we give money to anything, whether it's £5,000 or £1 million, we make sure that there is a paper attached which the people who receive have to fill in of how the money is used, where it's used, and is it used properly. And I think that is a fact of life, which perhaps some people may not agree with me, but I think today you have to be careful that you get the best results from your giving.
You mentioned Milton Keynes, which will mean a lot to Brits in the room, but others, it's one of the most extraordinary new town developments probably in the post-war period. Given the need and the pressures around social housing, what lessons are there from Milton Keynes for social housing in this age?
Well, the New Town Act was passed in England in 1890, and it's probably the most powerful act of planning in the United Kingdom. Once they set the example of a place to build a new town with the New Town Act, The people involved in building it don't have to worry about people complaining because it is laid down by law and you get on with it. And that we built 4,500 houses every year, and we developed a situation which I think was good. We needed to make sure that there was health opportunity by planting a great number of trees, and we gave people the opportunity of feeling. The only thing I have to tell you, which was a disaster, but that's when you get interference from central government. I had a hell of a fight with them, which was the transport situation in London is hopeless, nearly as bad as it is in New York and elsewhere. They refused to put underpasses in, and the result is we have 430 roundabouts. We are the world's biggest roundabout little city in the world. But that's when governments try to interfere and civil servants don't understand. But I think when you build a new town, you have to think of health and education. And that's what we did. The Open University is there, which is one of the great success stories out of England. And we also have a lot of schools, and we have a lot of recreation. I think you have to measure both, and it is also, might interest you to know, the center of Formula One motor racing. There are many, many major companies there doing actions for motor racing.
You mentioned Stuart Rose in his leadership of the Remain campaign, and we all read recently a letter that you penned about the EU referendum coming up. Do you mind sharing your thoughts on Brexit, the prospect of Brexit, whether you think it's a good idea or bad idea, Boris Johnson, and what is likely to happen?
Well, I think what's likely to happen is unpredictable until the 23rd of the month. But, and then again, I think the best people to ask what is predictable is to ask the bookmakers on the racetrack. Bookies are much better than pollsters. Pollsters are useless. They failed in our previous election, they failed in America, and they are no good. I hope there are no pollsters here. I don't know if there are such things as pollster family businesses. No, I think it's a complicated story. I think that the best remarks made by our Prime Minister was that, or also made by Haig today, ex-Foreign Minister, we're a democracy. We have to allow ourselves to have a referendum so that everyone has a choice. And that's what it's about. The choice is complicated, and there are those who feel that isolation from Europe is a better stand than being part of it. You know, trade has changed. I think one of the things that Brexit is not understanding is that we now live in a total global world. There are no barriers for trade, there are no barriers for family businesses, and I think one's got to be very careful to become isolated, and I think that we'll just have to hope that whatever the result is, it doesn't upset the British economy, which I think is need of support and needs the trade, which we are, I think, quite successful.
While we're on the subject of family firms, of course, there's a man in America who's got a family firm that he's probably put on hold a bit while he runs to become President of the United States. If I was to say the word President Trump to you, what would your reaction be?
Well, it's not for me to comment on people who run for the United States. I think that I think it's terribly important that young people participate in politics, in their local participation in whether it's a local council, local parish council, whatever they're doing. I think the more the better. But if you look around the world today, politicians have been degraded considerably from when I grew up. And I think it's unfortunate that some of the people who think they're politicians are not really practical. Very few politicians have ever managed anything, have never really been in a business in a proper way. And that is one of the sad things, because in the end, if you're in government, you have to learn about management. you have to be an experienced person to judge. And I think that's why the United States is going through a difficult moment. Anyway, it's for them to decide, and we'll see what happens.
Can we move from America to Africa? You've been involved in Africa both in business and in charity work for many, many years. You were on the board of De Beers, I think, for many years. Can you talk a bit about some of the things that you've achieved in Africa and what particular elements of the diverse African economy you would speak about most positively?
Well, I think the most important thing is to help the people less well off. I mean, there are three things that matter in Africa at the moment. One is health, which I think a lot has been done when you look back over the last 15 years, but a lot more has been done. And with health, you have to give good areas of proper sanitation. You have to make sure that the water system is working correctly. And thirdly, you have to work very hard on improving education for the less well off and make them feel that they have an opportunity to earn a living. I think one generalizing, because there are certain countries like Ghana who've done exceedingly well. South Africa is not doing well at the moment. And then you have other countries which are having their problems. So it's a complicated area of the world, and you know, they still remember the fact that we were the colonizers and were blamed for having given them no background. But I think it's improving, and I think in the next 20 to 30 years it will become better. But it's going to take a long time to improve the living standards of the average African.
Don't be shy. Don't leave here frustrated you didn't get a chance to ask your question as we enter the last 10 minutes. But I'm also happy to keep going. So
Let's ask the questions.
The technology. So you're also on the board of IBM for many years. Could you just give us your perspective on the social impacts of the age of computers and your feelings about how it's changed not just business but broader society?
Well, I'm sure many of you have families, you have grandchildren, you have children. What worries me is that with all the modern methods of technology, communication has changed. I think the computer was the most revolutionary thing that arrived, and with it, I think the first thing that it did, which was very positive and is positive, modern science and research in medicine has improved 5,000%. Cure, in many cases, a long way away. But I think research is absolutely remarkable thanks to technology. Where I worry about technology is for youth. I mean, how many of your children speak to you without using a machine, Facebook, or one of these gadgetries that pop out of the woodwork? How many of them talk to their friends? How many of them know how to write a letter? And I think this is going to be the big social question for the next 20 years. So it's over to you. You have got to prove to... I have a grandson who, age 5, has a computer. Don't ask me why he has a computer. What the hell he does with it, I don't know. But I worry about this, not from the point of view it not being an advancement, but social media is not a very good thing. I think that it is good as long as it's disciplined. And I think one of the biggest factors in business and among family business is to teach people ethics of standard of how they behave and how they relate to their parents and their relationship in a family. And I think modern technology has betrayed us in some ways on that side. But banks are the worst example. They're no longer human. No one knows who their banks are anymore. You have to press a button, rather like booking an aircraft. And you press number 3, and you're lucky if you get an answer. Number 4, if you get no answer. Number 5, they tell you you're not the person you are. So...
wanted to ask you about banking, actually, more broadly.
Let's give them a chance to talk.
I think I am, Stephen. I think, but I'm doing such a good job that no one... No, we've actually got a lady over there who would like to... I think there's a mic hurtling its way towards you. So I do...
All right, one more question then.
We've got a lady here, actually, who wants to ask a question.
If I may, thank you. Thank you, Sir Evelyn. My question has to do with looking at the past and then to the future. You mentioned that family wealth was built taking advantage of human capital, but going forward, we have to anticipate the trend of history. Now, you've just discussed the travesty of modern technology potentially, how it could erode social connections, that sort of thing. A trend that we've been observing and therefore anticipating is automation and what that would mean for job creation. Might you be concerned then the direction that we're taking when it comes to how technology advancement may perhaps erode human capital going forward and what that might mean for business?
Oh, that's difficult. Have you got a family? And are your children well disciplined? They will. Yeah, but I don't mean discipline in behavior. I mean discipline in behavior with the machinery they have. Presumably they all have computers, they have telephones, and they have all these gadgetries. And I think that, as I said before, I think one has to somehow explain to them carefully the other side effects of using that not for productive, but maybe for personal gain. And I can't generalize because every family is different, but I think modern mechanization, if you can call it that, or technology, whatever you like to call it, has changed family life. One can't get away from it. And there are good sides and bad sides. But I think one's got to be careful how one is utilizing it and how it is being put to work in a family, as like it's being put to work in a family business. You know, I think one of the weaknesses where I think family businesses are so much ahead of public businesses is family businesses talk to each other. They know what's going on. The crisis of Citibank was that no one knew what was going on. They were ciphers and they just didn't talk to each other. And that's why it failed.
That's the best question he's been asked so far. So we've got a question there and then a question there. Certainly, as the mic comes over, I have my UFRs on Messenger at the moment. I don't know about anyone else, rather than in person. But either one, yeah.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Khomos and I'm from Africa, and we have a foundation called HMPJ Foundation. My question is to you, sir. Having been in Africa and knowing the state of Africa, how does a foundation choose what to give? I know it's probably an emotive family choice perhaps, but how do you choose to give when there's so much need? How do you keep giving when it seems like, you know, there's no matter how much you give, the money doesn't end up anywhere, that you perhaps could use the money in other ways to alleviate instead of just giving? How do you also take away the guilt for example, as a family, in an area where maybe that particular family rises above others so fast? How do you go back to the area and give without having to feel guilty that you guys have made it and the rest of the people haven't made it? Thank you.
Well, thank you. That's a very important question because you have to have people on the ground or follow it up. I mean, we help greatly for farmers between Burundi and north on the borders there, the state next door, building a bigger warehouse so the farmers have somewhere to put their harvest and could be contained in proper atmosphere. But there were people on the ground watching that and seeing that the money was spent correctly, and so far, as far as we can gather, it's proved successful. But you're quite right. That's where there are a lot of good young people who go out and help in one form or another. And if you're sending, because it's not just money, It's the effect of the amount of money being effective and being useful. And you're quite right. You have to have people around, people watching a problem, and hopefully making sure it is correct. I'm sorry to tell you, because my life for conservation of animals, and he's gone now, thank God. The president of Rwanda was a crook, and we told him he was. Every piece of ivory off an elephant, he got 50% for his pocket. Can you imagine that? And the ivory trade is the worst example of deliberately underscoring for yourself on animal life. And as you know, the African elephant is different to the Indian elephant, but it was really a disaster. And we had an international meeting, and he appeared, and we told him, and the usual trick one has, you shake someone with the right hand, and the left hand is out at the back. And the left hand is the one that gets the money. But, and I think animal life will go down in history as the example of how people didn't watch over what you were saying. And I think it's terribly important to keep an eye on the ground for every project, because there's some wonderful people in Africa, some wonderful young people doing good work in many ways. And I thank you for your question.
Great question. Thank you. Yep.
I have a question. My name is Olga. I'm from Russia. And we have in our country just first generation of new wealthy people. That's why the experience of multi-generation family is very important to our country. My question is following. In your philanthropy activity, you have several fields like health, education. What are the proportion of these projects in your philanthropy activity, and how do you decide this allocation?
Oh, I don't know if you can add up a proportion. I mean, imagine in this room, every family that's here has certain interests. Either their parents or their grandparents were particularly interested in horticulture, or interested in mechanization, or interested in medical research. And therefore they concentrate their interest in the proportion of charity, often by the family's attitude or historical tie. I think it's very hard to define it. You get enthusiastic. I mean, I don't know you, so I can't say it, but I'll ask you the question. What is your most enthusiasm for which charity? What are you most enthusiastic for? Medicine, the arts, or education? What?
Education.
Education. Well, there you are. And I'm sure that you therefore do a great deal to help young people in apprenticeships, young people, whether it's a ballet dancer or it's a person wanting to learn to cook. Maybe you teach people how to look after food. I don't know. But I think we all have our own interests, and we concentrate on those interests, perhaps, and hopefully one spreads them occasionally to other interests. But families grow up, if they're in a business which is peculiar to one area, they concentrate on that area. But, you know, there was a question in the last session which wasn't well answered by the panel. What happens when you leave, and what happens to the family afterwards? Well, I'll tell you an example of two great families, the Ford Foundation and the Rockefeller Foundation, let alone Gates. They continue to do what the family was hoping to do initially, and already spread their words even greater. I know them, and they do a terrific job. It never dies. It just takes on the sentiment and carry it forward to the next generation. You know, Rockefeller over 100 years, Ford over 100 years. It's amazing.
Talking of doing a great job, you have done a fantastic job for us, Sir Evelyn. So on behalf of all of us here now, I'd like to say a huge thank you for sharing your experiences and taking the time to spend time with us here. So on behalf of us all, thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
So thank you so much, Sir Evelyn and Will, for this very interesting panel session here. And you may have recognized that we had Bill Ford and Eileen Rockefeller last year here at stage.
I know, that's why I mentioned them.
And I think this is absolutely in line, and it's truly remarkable how they've organized.
And in Germany and in France and in Italy, there are families that go on and on and on.
Exactly.
Very important.
Very important. And if you in the audience want to learn more about this, want to share more insights, there is a breakout session after the lunch, which will take place in Salon Petit, and will continue the dialogue on the importance of family philanthropy, how to organize for it, and how to make it effective, efficient, that your family's legacy can last for a very, very long time. Thanks to Evelyn for being with us.
Well, thank you for your organization.
Thank you.
You do a great job.
Thank you.